Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. And same. So yeah, we're going to talk about writing, but I'm just going to give people a chance to get in tonight. I will show off while we're letting people file in the my acquisition today. I'm really proud of this. A few weeks ago on Facebook, I saw that Kevin J. Anderson. I follow him on Facebook, and he was getting rid of his some of his like author copies of his books, just kind of cleaning out his office a bit. And he had a lot of really cool things. A lot of them were pretty pricey too. He had like full comic books and stuff like that, copies of Dune and this and that. And I was just scrolling down the list that he offered, and down at the bottom it was like $15 or something too, maybe 20, I forget. But I jumped on it because I was like, wow, that's going to be picked up in a heartbeat. But it's his author's review copy of Enemies and Allies, Batman Superman, and it's got the author, the marketing campaign stuff on the back and everything like that. So it's the author's copy, the official author's copy. And of course it's signed. He didn't specify if these would be signed, but I trusted him to sign them because I thought, what a cheap ripoff. You're getting them actually from the author and he's not going to sign it. Right, Stephen Cruz? But I did get him to sign it. So that's pretty cool. Kevin J. Anderson signed author's copy of Enemies and Allies. So pretty stoked about that. All right, we are going to talk about, as you see on the little banner down there, sentence structure. So why sentence structure? What I tell my students, whether I'm teaching a creative writing class or an argumentative writing class, doesn't matter. I say there's two parts to writing. There's the thinking and the communicating. Now, the thinking, that's your thoughts, your ideas of what to write. So if it's a story, then that's your ideas for the story. Your thoughts about the character, your thoughts about what's going to happen, your world building, all of that, that's your thinking. If you're writing some sort of argumentative piece of writing or nonfiction or whatever it is, that's, what are you thinking about to write? And that's where a lot of people today just get stuck. They think that that's all they need. All they need is the ideas. I think that's all. Editors take care of the rest. That's it. No. You desperately need the communicating, and the communication is the actual writing. It's the actual grammar, the actual sentence structure. Don't you dare ask anybody to read your story if you don't have a handle on basic grammar. And I know that sounds harsh because a lot of people are like, but no, I'm sorry. These are the tools of the trade. This is the medium. If you want to go shoot a movie and tell your story that way, or what you still need writing to even get to that point. But still, if you want to draw your story out, do it like that. But don't ask anybody to read your story if you can't take the time to learn how to write in terms of the mechanics of writing. Now, it's okay if you don't know. It's okay. That's something that you can learn. But don't just settle. I see so many people settle down in this idea of, I've just got a story. I'll just hire some editors and they'll take care of all that stuff. No. Editors are there to help you grow as a writer, and catch things you didn't catch. But no, if you're a writer, this is your craft. This is your medium, and you need to learn it, not just the ideas and the stories you want to tell. So what does that mean to learn writing? Obviously, as I said, basic grammar and whatnot. Sure. And, you're never going to be on top of grammar forever. You're never going to get to the point where you never, ever make a mistake in punctuation, for example, or anything like that. But you've got to learn it. You've got to start learning hey, learn how to use a comma. I know that's a terrifying concept, but learn how to use a comma. Don't you dare join two independent clauses in a sentence without putting a comma before that conjunction. So Stephen Cruz is late to class, but I made it. What I missed? Nothing. We're just getting started, Stephen Cruz. And I was just saying I am going to repost this. So good to see you there. So we got the, your basic grammar, your basic punctuation, everything like that. But then there's more to writing. There's more to your sentence structure that you want to take into account. Word choices. You want to eliminate echoes, eliminate the uses of words too closely together, that kind of thing. You want to eliminate a constant reliance on a certain one sentence structure. So let me go through this, what I mean, because this is basically what we're going to focus on tonight before we get. Yes. Okay. So we're going to start with the simple sentence. Very simple sentence. The simple sentence just has a subject and a predicate. Don't freak out if you don't know those terms. It's okay. A subject is the person or the thing in the sentence that's doing the action. The Blue Wonder here. I'm using my superhero that I read in my story last time I did one of these. So the Blue Wonder, he's a superhero. He's the subject. The predicate is the verb and everything that comes after the verb that refers back or describes the subject or what they're doing, describes the action. So flew is our past tense of fly. That's our verb here. And away, flying away. That's our predicate. So we have a subject and a predicate. Simple. Subject and verb. That's great. Subject and predicate. That's what we have. So that's a simple sentence. Now, you might want to, as I said in the Facebook group, you might want to pull up a page of your writing or a paragraph of your writing or something like that, just so you can look at it in a second, because I'm going to show you some things that you can do right now, even with your own writing, just to get a gauge on some of how to apply this kind of thing. So simple sentence. A lot of writers get stuck with the simple sentence. And you can tell in a lot of modern writing, it's just, I'm sure John mopped at his brow. The day was hot. The train pulled in. The ticket taker called his name. The dog went over. This, and it just sounds monotonous. This, then this, da 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 da. And that kind of simple sentence over and over and over. Subject, predicate, subject, predicate, subject, predicate gets monotonous. And you're a writer of language. You're a writer of a kind of music. You do need to, not consciously. You don't need to write these, wonderfully symphonious sounding sentences. It can be invisible, but it needs to get out of the way of the story. That's the thing about writing. It needs to be varied enough so that the repetition doesn't stop the reader from understanding the ideas and the story that you have for them. So, simple sentence. Let's move on to the compound sentence. Compound sentence. I did this right. Okay, so now we have a compound sentence is a sentence made of two independent clauses. So sentences are made out of clauses. That simple sentence we just looked at, which is here in the first part, the blue wonder flew away, that's an independent clause because we have a subject and a predicate. If you join a second independent clause to another, then you need a conjunction, a word like and, but, or, that kind of thing, and a comma comes before that conjunction. So the blue wonder flew away, and he changed back into his alter ego. You could take he changed back into his alter ego and make it its own sentence. This might sound a little basic for some people, but believe it or not, a lot of people, even if you know this or learned it at one point, it's good to get the refresher. So compound sentence, two independent clauses, subject, predicate, and subject, predicate. Okay, that's fine. That's another way of doing it. Now let's move on to our complex sentences. Complex sentence is when we add a dependent clause to our independent clause. So we just said an independent clause has a subject and a predicate, meaning it can be its own sentence. So the blue wonder flew away. We've got our subject, got our predicate. If we add a dependent clause to that, after saving Joyce Jenkins from the equalizer, well, that's not a complete sentence. There's no, we're waiting on the subject to come afterward because of the way that's worded. So, in a verb and everything like that. So that's a dependent clause. So if we add a dependent clause to an independent clause, now we have a complex sentence. The terminology there, it's good to know. Compound sentence, two independent clauses joined by a conjunction. The blue wonder flew away and he changed back into his alter ego. Complex sentence is when you just add a dependent clause to that. After saving Joyce Jenkins from the equalizer, the blue wonder flew away. Now, the last one I promise, is your complex compound sentence. So we're adding it all together now, throwing it all together into the mix. So here we have a complex compound sentence. After saving Joyce Jenkins from the equalizer, the blue wonder flew away and he changed back into his alter ego. You have all the elements there. We have two independent clauses joined with a conjunction, and we have a dependent clause thrown in there as well. So that's a complex compound sentence. So it's good to know these terms. It's good to know that these are the different forms of sentences so that when you look at your work, a good way to start this now is to, let me show you why we're doing this first. This is a famous quote by Gary Provost. I think I've talked about it before on my channel. I'm going to share this site here where it's written out. I think the site has even color coded it. But listen to this. Listen to the way it sounds. It's talking about the length of sentences as well, but it's the same thing with the sentence structure. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5 more sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals. Sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. So write with a combination of short, medium, and long sentences. Create a sound that pleases the reader's ear. Don't just write words, write music. And again, it's getting into the idea that as a writer, a storyteller or writer, writing is your medium. If writing is your medium, unless you're an artist who just wants to tell it through visuals or whatever, writing is your medium, you better have a good handle on that craft of writing, of the language, of writing in sentences and whatnot. So, and you can see this is about length of sentences here, but you can also see in there the different types of sentences, the simple, the complex, compound, the complex, and so forth. So it's something to think about for your writing. Now, get rid of this. One way to apply this is to take a piece of your writing, look at your first paragraph. You could look at your first page, it'd probably be the best, but just at first, you can just look at your first paragraph and label what each sentence is. If you want to color code it with different highlighters or whatever, that's fine, or just write a little different code, write simple, or S for simple, COM for compound, whatever for complex and such. And complex, compound, so we went over the four types there, but label out which type of sentence each is. Most likely you'll find your first paragraph has somewhat of an okay variety. It's not, you're going to have more of one than the other, and that's fine. It's not about making a graph and making sure you have an exact balance of each type of sentence in your work. No. But if your work is sounding stale, this is one thing that could possibly be the cause of it. So that's a good thing to do. You take your piece of writing and you start to label it out. And what you'll see, I know that one thing I saw in my writing at one point, my prose writing, was that I was heavily using compound sentences. And then when I would try to stop using compound sentences, I would do the unforgivable that Troy and Alan Sound Engraver fuss at me about, is starting sentences with a conjunction, which is basically kind of the same thing, even though you're lopping the sentence, but because I was doing it really didn't matter, So yeah, you see those things in your work that you do too much of, and then you want to add variety. You want to make the writing, the idea, as Gary Provost, that quote said, you want to rate the writing music. You want to, but whether you're writing it to sound as music that the reader thinks, oh, that's so nice, most readers aren't going to get that. Most readers are just it's going to sound so pleasant that the language itself is going to get out of the way of the story. And that is the end goal. You want your story in their head. It's not like you're writing poetry. If you're writing poetry, or if you're writing some poetic parts of your prose, some writers are more poetic than others. That's great. But even something like Edgar Allan Poe, remember when we looked at The Telltale Heart and how he was just every little piece of the prose was just perfectly ordered toward the effect he wanted to give. That was a kind of poetry. But when you're just reading it alone and not thinking about it, we're not dissecting it in a class or a lesson setting like this, you don't think about the construction of it. The effect just kind of washes over you. And that's the goal for storytelling. So that's the last thing I want to talk about with this, is that one little kink in the plan of labeling all the sentences, complex, compound, simple, and so forth. And that is the fact that you're writing creatively. You do have creative license. You have poetic license. As I've said, it's vital to learn proper grammar. You need to learn proper sentence structure. You need to learn proper. You need to know the rules so that when you want to break the rules, you can do it well and it's justifiable. And I hesitate to say that because students or writers just think, oh, well, yeah, so I can just do whatever I want because it's all creative. No. You read stuff that people just kind of throw that out and think, it's all creative. It's no big deal. No, they sound incredibly ignorant and subpar, and the writing just comes off as laughable. It's just trying so hard, but it's not achieving. And yet you can, once you know the rules, then you know when to break them. So Heart that I just mentioned, that does it plenty. There's lots of little sentence fragments in there in the beginning because he's writing in somebody's voice. He's writing in a narrator's first person narration in that perspective, and that person, that's the way they would speak. Obviously, that's fine. But I'm going to read you an example that we all know from my channel in the book studies, the Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. I'm going to read you that prologue. And if you guys remember when we did the when we did the book study on this, how I was just geeking out over every little chapter because Ray Bradbury is just a master writer. He knows his language. He's a master at prose and whatnot. So listen, is I'm just going to read the first paragraph, and you're going to hear a sentence fragment or two, but you're going to also hear the variety. You're going to hear sometimes he'll rely on one sentence structure type to get an effect, but then he will change it and move along so it's not just stale. First of all, it was October, a rare month for boys. Okay, complex sentence, right? First of all, you don't need that there. It was October. That's basically a sentence right there. A rare month for boys. Again, a dependent clause. So complex sentence right out of the gate. Not that all months aren't rare. Well, that's a sentence fragment right there. But there'd be bad and good, as the pirates say. Again, so playful, using different languages or different accents. Take September, a bad month. School begins. Consider August, a good month. School hasn't begun yet. July, well, July's really fine. There's no chance in the world for school. June, no doubting it, June's best of all, for the school doors spring wide and September's a billion years away. See how he worked up to that last sentence that was a little bit longer, and that's that first paragraph. But you take October now. School's been on a month, and you're riding easier in the rains, jogging along. You got time to think of the garbage you'll dump on old man's Prickett's porch, of the hairy ape costume you'll wear to the YMCA the last night of the month. And if it's around October 20th and everything's smoky smelling and the sky orange and ash gray at twilight, it seems Halloween will never come in the fall of broomsticks and a soft flap of bedsheets around corners. But one strange, wild, dark year, Halloween came early. The sentence structure, we're flowing in and out, and you're hanging on the words, even though he's doing really cool things with the language that you can kind of back up and take a look at and understand why. It's so easy to get wrapped up in because it's designed to be invisible. It's designed just to get out of the way of that story. One year, Halloween came on October 24th, 3 hours after midnight. At that time, James Nightshade of 97 Oak Street was 13 years, 11 months, 23 days old. Next door, William Holloway was 13 years, 11 months, and 24 days old. Both touched toward 14. It almost trembled in their hands. And that was the October week when they grew up overnight and were never so young anymore. If you don't want to read this book after that, you need help. Psychiatric help. I mean, that is just amazing. I just want to heck with the rewatch. I'll just read this tonight. It's so good. But it's so good because he's got the thinking. He's got the story he wants to tell, and he knows it, and he knows the feelings and the senses that he wants to evoke, and he's just doing all that so well. We'll talk about that kind of stuff later. But he does that so well, but he doesn't let the language get in the way. He also knows how to communicate it. He's got the thinking and the communication. So brilliant. 9:38. So we're not going to keep going too long with this. Let me check in to see if anybody has any questions. I think that's the end of the kind of official lesson because I want these to be very little mini lessons that I can give and I can kind of cut off and just publish as their own little 10 or so minute lessons later. Zachary says, I love filmmaking as a medium for how it combines so many other mediums within it. It's what I want to do for a career. That's great. And that's awesome. Especially right now when all of our filmmakers in Hollywood just don't know what they're doing. They're just so agenda driven and whatnot. So that's great. But, as I was saying, know your medium. So yours is obviously going to be visual. But really, I had an English teacher in high school one time. He had this poster up on his wall, and it said, writing is the primary art. And I didn't really know what that meant at first, in high school or whatever, but he explained it, and it makes perfect sense, especially now after having, studied English and studied writing and whatnot, is that it doesn't matter what form of art you're going to produce, writing is the first thing you need to do for it. Obviously, in film, you need to write a screenplay or something, but even in something like painting, painting a picture, you might not formally write out notes, but you're writing in your mind, you're composing in your mind the story you want to tell with your composition or with the expression that you want to express if it's more of an expressionist piece or something like that. So, writing is a primary art. So, yeah. But yeah, I guess the takeaway is if you're interested in the things I said about sentence structure, you want to apply them, you want to test your writing and see if you're overly relying on one sentence structure or another, you can do that. So what you want to do is look at your own writing and just label out each sentence, label out the paragraph, label out the page or whatever. So